Very good morning to all of you. Today discuss about the type of movement. This is the part of biomechanics. So there are the two type of movements. One is a gliding movement, one is angular movement. So first to discuss about the gliding movement. Gliding movement is the simply said the kind of motion that can take place in a joint, one surface gliding or moving over another without any angular or rotary movement. True, it is very common to all movable joint, but it most of the anti calculations of the curves and tarsus, it is the only motion permitted. So gliding movement is it is only the motion permitted. And angular movements occur only between the long bones by angular movements. So the angle between the two bones is increased and decreased. It may take place forward, backward, flexion, extension, adduction and abduction combined with flexion and extension are made within the more movable joint, as in the hip and the shoulder. The various movements which fall under the angular movements are described below. So now I am going to discuss below the angular movement. So this is for the angular movement. So with the picture I am going to discuss is better to understand everyone. uh, this is the main thing is that flexion. Look at the flexion is bending part at a joint so that the angle between them decreased and the part comes closer together, bending the lower limb at the knees. And extension is look at strengthening the part of at a joint so that the angle between them increased and the parts move forward apart to strengthen the lower limb at the knees. And then adduction, moving a part away from the midline, lifting the upper limb horizontally to form a right angle with the side of the body. Next one is that adduction. Adduction is moving the parts towards the midline, returning the upper limb from the horizontal position in the side of the body. Then circumduction is the movement which take place between the head of the bone and its articular cavity. Okay, and it is a compound circular movement which involves flexion, extension, adduction, and abduction. In circular circumduction, a part moves in such a way that its end follows a circular path, moving a finger in a circular motion without moving the hand. Okay, so this is for look at that. This is for the adduction is there, adduction, then abduction, then flexion. Look at that, flexion, extension. Okay, and next I'm talking about that rotation. Rotation is a form of movement in which bone moves around a central axis without undergoing any displacement from this axis. Moving a part around an axis is called rotation. For example, twisting the head from side to side. Okay, then other movements are there. So other movements are talking about the other movement. Look at that, the hyperextensions. Hyperextensions, the excess extension from the part at the joint beyond the anatomical position, bending the head backward beyond the upright position, or just your wrist bending your upward position. And then dorsiflexion, bending the foot at the ankle towards the chin. So this is called the dorsiflexion. And then ankle, bending the foot at the ankle towards the chin. And then plantar flexion, so bending the foot at the ankle towards the sole. Okay, and then inversion, the turning the foot so the sole face uh, medially. Look at that, inversion. So this is dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. Now this is the inversion. Inversion is that the turning the foot so the sole face medially, and then say eversion turning the foot so the sole faces laterally, turning the foot so sole faces laterally. Okay, this is the inversion and eversion. And then after that I'm talking about the uh, that protection uh, protection moving a part forward is means that thrusting the chin forward, then push the chin forward, that is called the protection. And then retraction, the moving a part backward, pulling the chin backward, pulling the chin or backward, that is a retraction. Okay, retraction and then detection and look at that, retraction, reduction, reduction and okay, protection and reduction. Look at that, the protection and reduction. This is the protection, this is the reduction. Okay, and then next part is that uh, next part this is for the elevation. So elevations, if you know the elevations, the raising the part uh, that is the stagging and shoulder, and when the jerking and shoulder, the raising the part of jerking and shoulder, that is called the elevation. Okay, it is called the elevation, raising the part of jerking and shoulder. Look at that, it is about jerking and shoulder. This one is elevation. And then depression, the lower up part, lowering the part, dropping the shoulder, then dropping the shoulder. Once shoulder is dropping, that is called this depression. The supination, supinations is the everybody knows the supination. Supinations, look at that, the supination. I'm going to show you supination. So supinations, the turning the hand so the palm is upward and facing interiorly. Okay, position or in anatomical position. And pronation, pronation, the turning the hands so that palm is downward facing posteriorly, so in anatomical position, that is called the pronation. Okay, so supinations, and the palm is upward, and pronation is palm is downward facing the that okay. So this is for the you I'm talking about that movement of joints. So there is a lot of movement: flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, rotations, the circumflexions, the other movements are there, dorsiflexion, hyperflexations, plantar flexions, inversions, eversions, protection, retraction, elevation, reflection, supination, etc. Okay, understood. Now next one I'm going to teach about the, this is not your part, about the friction. Frictions, everybody know the frictions. According to the frictions and law of the motions, the body at a rest will remain at a rest. Okay, a body is motion will remain in motion at the same speed and it is same direction unless the act on by an external force, that is called a friction. Okay, and then and there are two type of frictions. One is called a static friction, one is called a dynamic friction. So what is dynamic friction, what is static friction? The opposing force that comes into play when one body tends to move over the surface of another, but the actual motion has not yet started, it's called static friction. And dynamic friction is the opposing force that comes into the play when one body is actually moving over the surface of another body. Further, dynamic frictions may be okay, that is called the dynamic friction. Again I repeat, that dynamic friction is opposing force that comes into the play when one body is actually moving over the surface of another body, that is called the dynamic friction. So dynamic friction, there are the two type of dynamic friction, one is sliding dynamic friction, one is rolling dynamic friction. So this is for the example of the static friction. Look at the static frictions. Example: static friction, sliding friction, viscosity, rolling friction, and air resistance. Okay, and this is for the static friction. Already have discussed this one. That's and then I'm talking about the sliding friction. Sliding, the opposing force that comes into play when one body is actually sliding over the surface. So sliding friction, which one is that? Look at that, the sliding friction. Sliding friction is that opposing force that comes into play when one body is actually sliding over the surface of the other body. It's called as sliding friction. For example, ice skating and in uh, landing the pole in pole vault. And next one is rolling friction. Rolling friction, look at that, the rolling friction, the opposing force that comes into the play when one body is actually rolling over the surface of the other body is called rolling friction. For example, when a hockey or cricket ball is hit, it rolls on the surface of the ground. It stops after some time due to rolling friction. So such type of friction is widely seen in game and sports. Okay, so these are the sliding frictions, static frictions, sliding frictions, and then rolling frictions. Already I have discussed this one. So uh, now uh, that's yeah, already we have discussed that this part, that rolling fiction part. But after fictions part, you this is not your part, mechanical analysis of walking and running, because up to this much. So if you guys, if you have any queries about this frictions and that movement of joint, okay, so you can discuss each other. So at first you just go through the video properly, then we'll discuss. Okay, thank you very much.